This is Group 4's presentation on the cons of no-kill shelters by Kayla Frederick, Sienna Mendoza, Aaliyah Gavia, and we are going to be talking about the history, ethical aspect, cultural importance, sociological importance, current events, and cons of no-kill shelters. The History of Kill Shelters by Kayla Frederick. The history of kill shelters started in the late 1800s when the first animal shelters were created in the United States. These shelters were built because there were too many stray animals and people were worried about public health problems caused by the overpopulation of dogs and cats. However, the way shelters dealt with stray animals back then were very harsh. Many homeless cats and dogs were killed using cruel methods like clubbing, shooting, or even drowning. By the 1980s, the term pound was commonly used to describe shelters where many animals were put down. At that time, animal welfare wasn't a major concern for most people. There weren't many programs to help reduce the number of unwanted animals like spaying and neutering, so the problem kept getting worse. Shelters often had no choice but to euthanize animals because there were way more pets than homes willing to take them in. In the early 1990s, millions of animals were still being killed in shelters every year. Although more people were starting to care about animal welfare, the issue of overcrowding remained a huge challenge. Many pets were still being bred without control, adding to the growing number of animals without homes. Even though animal cruelty laws had started to be introduced as early as the 1820s in Britain, it took a long time for shelters in the U.S. to begin focusing on more humane solutions. Slowly, ideas like spaying and neutering and better adoption programs began to grow, but shelters still struggled with the overwhelming number of animals needing care. The story of kill shelters shows how important it is to find better ways to manage pet populations and prevent cruelty. It's a reminder of how far animal welfare has come and how much work there still is to do.
Ethical Aspects by Sienna Mendoza. Some animal shelters have ethical consequences, which influences people to turn away animals whenever they are sick or old, or when animals are dumped on the side of the road, causing them to stray off and end up dead. The argument of euthanization over the quality of life. No-kill shelters' main focus is finding a home for the animals, which results in other animals being euthanized whenever animals are sick or old in order to make more room for incoming animals. The animals are kept in poor conditions, allowing them to get ill and get other diseases that can contaminate the other animals. Animal shelters cannot operate effectively without the confidence of the communities they serve and must be seen by the public as a safe haven for the lost, stray, or abandoned animals. Cultural importance of non-kill shelters. The welfare of the animals and the challenge of finding homes for them, which involves a great deal of community involvement and societal expectations, are other issues that surface and challenges the social importance of non-kill shelters. In addition, accepting all animals leads to overcrowding and poor living conditions. The control of the infectious diseases is another conflict in these shelters because new animals welcomed to the shelter may carry multiple forms of pathogens. The more crowded the shelters are, the more vulnerable the rest of the animals are. Although there are programs and resources that can help animals and provide them with services that can help decrease the reproduction of the animals, it does not solve the problem that is around non-kill shelters and the traditional shelters. Sociological importance of non-kill shelters by Sienna Mendoza. A non-kill animal shelter is interpreted as a healthy way because it does not euthanize the animals, but instead takes in animals and provides them with a safe space that allows them to find a good home. However, a con that plays into the sociological perspective of non-kill shelters is that there isn't a lot of support, which makes it very difficult to find a community support as well as financial. According to Penn State's psychology article, it states that on the other hand, when an animal is terminally ill and suffering, they believe euthanasia is the correct decision. A dog can't live a life if he's not going to be able to run and play, and instead by laying down in pain and room by himself all day. Many would say that the non-kill animal shelters turn away animals whenever they have reached a capacity, causing more dogs and cats to reproduce, resulting them to be without homes and having troubling behaviors, making them difficult to get adopted.
Current events happening in no-kill shelters, the cons of it. So touching base on speaking about hoarding and mismanagement. Starting off, some no-kill shelters have been accused of just stacking animals in severe circumstances. The Animal League of Boston in 2022 has become involved in a scandal. It was discovered that the shelter has been keeping animals in terrible conditions. Too many animals have been brought into shelter, making it impossible to provide them proper space or attention. Animals were kept filthy in filthy circumstances, and several were discovered to have untreated illnesses. So to touch base on this, people feel like they need to preserve every animal, and it may overwhelm shelters to the point where they are unable to give proper care, which can result in circumstances which animals are left in super unhygienic conditions, not being able to get cleaned properly, fed properly, walked around, having that what animals need, because they are just the animal shelters are just so overworked and overwhelmed with how many animals they are getting per year, per month. So to touch base on this, we can also talk about overcrowding. The numerous of no-kill shelters are finding it difficult to accommodate the volume of animals they accept. The animals kept piling up as they follow the no put down policy, which causes overpopulation. For instance, the Humane Society of Missouri stated in 2023 that an increase in animals during the epidemic was contributing to the overcrowding in its no-kill shelter. So animals, people during the pandemic couldn't take care of the animals, couldn't take care, people were going, what was happening during COVID, owners were facing their own difficulties during COVID where they did have to take their animal to the shelter. Their goal was to preserve every animal, but they encountered difficulties in giving the animals the required veterinarian treatment, socialization, and enrichment they needed in order to survive, in order to grow, in order to flourish. So to touch base back on current events of no-kill shelters is hoarding, mismanagement, and overcrowding that is happening to these animals. So they feel like it's needed to be put down. I will be talking about the cons of no-kill shelters now. We'll be touching base on three things. First, starting off with animals suffering due to lack of euthanasia. The no-kill ethic occasionally saves animals from being put down if they have serious medical disorders. However, they might not be able to be adopted ever because of how these animals are they have medical disorders, irreversible conditions, or severe behavior difficulties. And because of this, they just sit inside of a shelter for so long without being put down because they have no other option. Another one is the lack of focus on root causes. No-kill shelters might focus on their efforts on preserving animals instead of tackling underlying issues, that led to overpopulation, which includes spay and neutering and educating the public about pet ownership, about what you adopted this pet, you gotta take ownership. Get it spayed, get it neutered, get whatever you have to do possible for these animals aren't continuing to go through this. According to PETA's research on no-kill shelters, claims that although some facilities prioritize saving as many as they can, they do not give attention to more measures like sterilization programs, which can lower the total animals in need. So taking that extra step can lower animals in shelters significantly. Getting animals spayed, getting animals neutered, everything can go down pretty low. And the last one is limited capacitivity to address behavior or medical needs. Animals with severe medical conditions may be kept in no-kill shelters for longer than they have to, because people can't care for them. People can't afford their medical or their vet bills. Animals with severe diseases may suffer more if they're kept in shelters for long periods of time without proper treatment. And this was according to the AVMA, also known as the American Veterinary Medical Association, and other animal welfare organizations. Animals are sitting there without getting any type of basic needs that they need if they're sick or if they're dying, because they have to look over. They are probably watching over so many animals, and they can't take that one-on-one action with every single animal inside of the shelter.
In summary, in the 1800s, shelters used harsh methods to control stray animals. By the 1980s and 1990s, overcrowding was common and many animals were euthanized despite growing animal welfare efforts. Today, shelters deal with ethical issues like overcrowding, poor conditions, and debates about euthanasia versus suffering. No-kill shelters try to save animals but often face space and funding problems. Culturally, shelters need community support but struggle with disease and overcrowding. Programs like spay and neuter help but aren't enough. From a sociological view, no-kill shelters provide safe spaces but can take every animal, leading to more strays. Some animals suffer if they stay too long without proper care. Recent scandals and overcrowding have made the problem worse, especially after the pandemic increased the number of homeless animals. While no-kill shelters have good intentions, they face challenges like helping sick or aggressive animals, focusing too much on saving lives and letting some animals suffer unnecessarily. A balance between saving lives and preventing suffering is key for the future of shelters. And that concludes our presentation. Thanks for listening.